What's up, y'all? Welcome to Tabletop Bros. Today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Christmas Battleforce box set for the Dark Angel Space Marines, the Inner Circle Task Force. We're going to be taking a look at the composition inside the box set, the total points inside the box, and then what I would do to expand this out to 2,000 points, and also some of the various detachments that would serve this army well. So right off the bat, I gotta say, this is going to be an extremely popular box set. This is absolutely phenomenal. Dark Angels are one of the most powerful and most popular Space Marine chapters. They were the first founding of the Emperor, and I'm definitely after one of these box sets myself. So if you too are after this box set, don't mess around. Make sure to get your pre-order in as soon as possible. So right off the bat, we have Lion el Jonson, the Primarch of the Dark Angels. So 300 points for the Lion. He is absolutely phenomenal. As long as there's some infantry nearby, he can't be targeted outside of 12 inches. He also has the Fights First ability, which means coupled with the Heroic Intervention stratagem, he can charge into combat and fight before your opponent will have the ability. He can absolutely destroy any monsters, vehicles, or infantry single-handedly. And he is an excellent choice at 300 points. Next, we have a Terminator Chaplain. Terminator Chaplain is not particularly amazing in combat. He's pretty durable if you build him with the shield. But the main benefit he's going to give is the unit that he's attached to is going to have +1 to wound, and then also a 4-up save against mortal wounds and devastating wounds. So he's going to make the unit that he's attached to hit substantially harder and also be much more survivable. And I think realistically the best thing to do is pair him up with one of the Deathwing Knight squads armed with the swords. So the next squad we have is the Deathwing Knights. Those are 250 points. And then we have another squad of Deathwing Knights for 250 points. I would arm the second squad with the maces. So you have the anti-monster, anti-vehicle. And then realistically with the chaplain in the other squad, either one of those squads can deal with just about anything in the game. And then next we have the Inner Circle Companions. So you're going to have 2 squads of 3 companions. And now these models are absolutely amazing. The kit also gives you some really cool options. One really nice thing about the Inner Circle Companions is they have 2 different profiles on their swords, one for taking down like weaker infantry models, and then one for hitting hard against more durable targets. More than likely though, you're going to put these 2 squads together and just make one big squad of 6. So if we total up everything in this box set, we're going to have 1,055 points. Now keep in mind that depending on what detachment you take, you'll be able to arm the chaplain with the various enhancements from that detachment. So let's take a look at the best detachments in my opinion. Now obviously there's a ton you can choose from because you can take the ones from the Space Marine book. You can also take the ones from the Dark Angel specific book. So you're going to have a total of 9 detachments to choose from. But I think the top 4 for me are number 1, Gladius is really good. It gives you a lot of tactical flexibility, confers a lot of bonuses army-wide, and it's basically the Swiss Army knife of detachments. You have various different doctrines that you can activate once per game to allow your army to advance and charge, advance and shoot, or fall back and charge. Not to mention you have some awesome stratagems available to you as well to be able to deal with any situation as it arises. Next we have the Inner Circle Task Force. Now this one is Dark Angel specific. Again, you're going to have some really cool stratagems available to you, also some nice enhancements as well. But the main benefit conferred by this detachment is you'll be able to either pick an objective that you control, or you can pick the other objectives that you don't control, and then you can get bonuses to wound. You also have stratagems that will give you other bonuses if you're attacking things that are on that objective. Next we have the Vanguard Spearhead. So I actually use the Vanguard Spearhead quite a bit. This one is really good because it gives your opponents -1 to hit if they're outside of 12 inches. You also always have the benefit of cover, so you can stand right out in the open. And unless your opponent gets up really close to you, they're going to be -1 to hit you. And you're also going to have the benefit of cover, which stacks extremely well with anything that has AP up against your Terminators or tactical armor. You also have a lot of really good stratagems that specifically benefit infantry. The ability to fall back when your opponent declares a charge against you, so you can move outside their charge range, make them fail, and then leave them stranded in the middle of the open to where they can later be charged or shot off the table. You have the ability to sticky objectives. You also have some really good enhancements as well. Vanguard Spearhead is definitely worth taking a look at. And then finally we have what is arguably the worst detachment or the most overlooked, and that is the First Company Task Force. So this one is designed specifically to benefit Terminators and veterans. In this case, all of the Deathwing Knights would benefit from it. And then if you take something like Stirred Guard or Blade Guard veterans, you can benefit them with the stratagems as well. But you have some really cool stuff like the ability to once per game, when you Oath of Moment your target, you can have full rerolls to wound against that target as well. You also have some cool enhancements that grant you extra attacks or feel no pain abilities. And then once per game, you can grant those to the entire squad, not just the character. And then finally, you actually have another really good one that is when you get charged into combat, you can activate the stratagem on one of your Terminator units and do a -1 damage to their attacks. Which means if you do this on the Deathwing Knights, you can take something from 3 damage down to 1 damage. So making it almost impossible for this unit to be killed in combat. And then finally, you have the ability to pick up a Terminator squad and then put them back into Deep Strike and re-Deep Strike them again, which is pretty nice with the Terminators as they tend to be slow and sometimes you'll find yourself out of place with them. The ability to pick them back up and put them somewhere else is excellent. So definitely some awesome detachments available depending on what route you want to go with your Dark Angels army, what kind of strategy you're going to use, and what you're going to fill out the next 1,000 points with. So let's take a look at what I think you should put in the army or some of the other possibilities. All right, so we have roughly 1,000 points to spend. So I went ahead and threw together a couple of things that I personally would like to put in this list. Some are necessity, some are just things that I personally like. And then also some alternative options as well for expanding out this 1,000 point Battleforce into a 2,000 point fully flushed out Dark Angels army. So first off, we have Azrael. He is the chapter master of the Dark Angels and he is absolutely phenomenal. He is a 100% auto include at 115 points. He's going to grant you a second command point every battle round, which is amazing. He's also going to give any squad that he's attached to a 4-up invulnerable save, a once per game 4-up shrug against mortal wounds, and then also sustained hits. So it's very common to take Azrael and attach him to an Inner Circle Companion squad, give them the 4-up invulnerable save that they don't have, the once per game feel no pain against mortal wounds, and then sustained hits even if they're using their lethal strike profile. So very, very good and definitely a necessity. And then next we have a Librarian. So 65 points for a Librarian. He has a decent little shooting attack, but again, he has the same ability as Azrael to grant a 4-up invulnerable save to any unit that he's attached to, and also a shrug against psychic attacks. And I put him in the list specifically if you're going to be taking more Inner Circle Companions, because I definitely think that they need an invulnerable save to make them much more durable. And I plan on including 2 more boxes of those or 1 more unit of 6. And then we'll talk about an alternative to this a little bit later, where we could potentially swap out the Librarian for a Judicar and the other 2 Inner Circle Companions for some Blade Guard veterans. So next we have Scouts. I have 2 squads of Scouts at 65 points apiece in this list. I think the Scouts are an absolute necessity. They have the Infiltrate abilities, so they can block out any kind of Scout moves from your opponent, any infiltrates from your opponent. They're also extremely good because you can pick them back up off the table at the end of your opponent's turn and then bring them back in from strategic reserves. So they are excellent for scoring secondary objectives. They're surprisingly durable with 2 wounds apiece and a 4-up armor save. And then every once in a while you get a lucky shot off with a missile launcher and do a little bit of damage. But in every Space Marine list I run, always 2 squads of Scouts. And then next we have the Infiltrators. Now these are a defensive staple. They are 100 points for 5, and they have the block out 12-inch deep strike null. And again, they are an absolute necessity. Once again, you have the ability to infiltrate, but typically I'll put these on my home objectives and block out the back corner of my board so there's no way my opponent can drop in behind enemy lines, take my objective, or get to my crucial game pieces when I don't want them to. And then next we have those 2 squads of Inner Circle Companions, 90 points apiece for them. They're going to be going with the Librarian in 1 6-man squad. And then I personally like a little bit of shooting in my army, 2 Gladiator Lancers at 160 points apiece. Start them off completely concealed from your opponent, and then when your opponent reveals some kind of heavy hitting piece, goes after your Deathwing Knights when they're on an objective, or tries to move up with a key monster or vehicle, you pop out the Gladiator Lancers, and they can pretty much deal with anything between the 2 of them. And then finally you have 1 squad of Jump Pack Intercessors. So the Jump Pack Assault Intercessors are 90 points. They move 12 inches with fly. They can move through terrain because they're infantry. They do mortal wounds on the charge. You can give them a single power fist and potentially a plasma pistol if you want. But again, they're great for just getting in a certain area that you need to be, dealing with a cheap chaff threat. But realistically, they're much more for scoring secondaries. So that's going to give us a total of 1,000 points, which gives us just a little bit over 2,000 points with our initial battle force. You can tweak some things around, change some things up. This is by no means the perfect list. There's tons of other options out there, but I think you'll find that overall this is going to be in line with most competitive lists you'll see. So let's talk about some of the alternatives you could go with. So we talked about the Blade Guard being potentially swapped out for the other Inner Circle Companions. So I would take 6 Blade Guard and then I would attach a Judicar to them. The beauty of the Blade Guard is they don't hit quite as hard as the Inner Circle Companions or have the versatility, but they come with a 4-up invulnerable save already. And then attaching the Judicar to them will give the entire unit the Fights First ability. The Judicar has precision in combat and gains bonuses when he kills a character. So they are a great anti-charge threat and specifically good against other combat armies. Next, you have the option for the Repulsor Executioner. Now this is basically just a buffed up Gladiator Lancer. The gun is a little bit better. It has a bunch of other like side guns that are better than the Lancers. It's 220 points instead of 160, but it has a toughness 12 instead of 10, and it has 16 wounds instead of 12. It also has a transport capacity, which means you could throw a couple of the Inner Circle Companions in the back, move them up the field, and then jump them out on key locations or points. Next, we have the Predator Destructor. Predator Destructor is excellent against infantry as it gains an extra bonus 1 AP. Also, you have the ability to put las cannons on the side, so you can end up with 6 shots from the autocannon, 2 shots from the las cannon, plus a once per game hunter killer missile. And at only 130 points, these things are great. You could potentially swap out the Lancers for 2 of those, or do 1 and 1. And now we also have the Ballistus Dreadnought. Now in the past, I have liked the Ballistus Dreadnought, but I found that it's just not as good as the Predator Destructors or the Gladiator Lancer. But with the recent points drop, this thing has come down to 130 points. And honestly, I think it is a really good choice. You could potentially even run up to 3 of these. You're going to get 2 shots with the las cannon, 2 shots with the missile launcher, or you can use the blast profile for eliminating cheap chaff or weaker targets. But the real beauty of this is it comes with a 2-up armor save. And the 2-up armor save combined with cover means that in order for your opponent to actually be able to hurt this thing, the first point of AP is gone. The second point of AP can get absorbed by Armor of Contempt. So realistically, in order to get this thing from a 2-up to a 3-up save in cover, they have to have at least 3 AP. And even if they come at you with -4 AP, you're still going to be saving 50% of the hits if you use Armor of Contempt. So that makes these things substantially more durable than like a 3-up armor save vehicle. And for only 130 points, these things are definitely a good choice. Next, we have the Impulsor. This is just your cheap troop transport. It has the ability to transport 7 models, which means you could put either the Blade Guard or the Inner Circle Companions inside with their attached character. They can shoot their pistols out the back, and you have a couple of little like basic gun options on it as well. But for the most part, you're using this thing for mobility. And then finally, we have Inceptors. Inceptors are always a good choice, either plasma or bolters. 130 points, and the beauty of these is they're good at getting to a key target. Whether you need to assassinate a character to score some secondaries, or you need to drop behind enemy lines, get onto a point, the ability to drop outside of 3 inches instead of the normal 9-inch restriction from Deep Strike makes these extremely good. And if you're running something like the Vanguard Spearhead detachment, you have the ability to pick these guys back up at the end of your opponent's turn and then do their ability again. So very, very cool Inner Circle Task Force for the Dark Angels here. Excellent box set. There's a million different ways you can go with this. And with the Space Marine Army, you have a ton of choices. This is just one particular army list that I put together. But I think exploring some of the options, some of the various detachments, you could definitely take this in a different direction if you wanted. You could go absolutely no vehicles and all infantry. You could go a little bit heavier on the vehicles and make them choose between trying to kill the Deathwing Knights or trying to blow up some of those vehicles. But overall, this is an excellent army. It's got a ton of different options with the various detachments. And again, I think this is probably one of the best boxes Games Workshop has ever released on composition alone, and is an excellent starting point for any Dark Angels players out there. So let me know what you think of the Inner Circle Task Force, what you think of my list breakdown, and what you personally have or want in your own Dark Angels army. And if you got any value out of this video, hopefully by now TableTop Pros has earned your subscription. So yeah, that's it for the Inner Circle Task Force Christmas Battleforce box set for the Dark Angels. And that's it from the Tabletop Bros. Later!